At one point, the vacuum cleaner industry looked completely settled. Millions of households around the world bought machines that worked in almost exactly the same way. The biggest brands controlled store shelves. Customers replaced bags, accepted declining performance, and rarely questioned the technology hidden inside a product they used every week. For decades, that was simply how the business worked. Then one engineer became obsessed with a problem most companies had learned to live with. The problem seemed small. A vacuum cleaner would gradually lose suction as dust filled the bag. Manufacturers knew it, consumers experienced it, yet the industry continued selling the same solution year after year. What looked like a minor inconvenience had become one of the most profitable habits in the business. The machines generated revenue, and so did the replacement bags. Changing the system meant challenging an entire industry model that had existed for generations. But while the market appeared stable from the outside, a conflict was already beginning beneath the surface. On one side stood some of the largest appliance companies in the world, protected by established brands, manufacturing power, and decades of experience. On the other side was a single inventor who believed the product itself was fundamentally flawed. What followed was not just the development of a new vacuum cleaner. It became a battle against industry assumptions, corporate resistance, and repeated failure. Prototype after prototype produced disappointing results. Years passed without a breakthrough that could reach consumers. Investors showed little interest. Manufacturers rejected the idea. The market offered no obvious reason to change. Yet the pursuit continued. Then something remarkable happened. The solution eventually worked. The machine that emerged looked different, operated differently, and challenged the very economics of the industry.
Instead of accepting performance loss as normal, it promised consistent suction. Instead of hiding its technology, it put it on display. Instead of competing only on price, it turned engineering into a selling point. What had started as an attempt to solve a household frustration became the foundation of an entirely new kind of consumer technology company. The impact extended far beyond vacuum cleaners. Competitors were forced to respond. Design became a weapon. Engineering became part of the brand. Ordinary home appliances suddenly became products people talked about, compared, and even admired. A category that had been largely ignored for decades was transformed into a global battleground for innovation. But the story is not simply about a successful invention. It is about how one idea challenged an entire industry, why so many established companies failed to see the threat coming, and how a product most people considered boring became the foundation of a multi-billion-dollar empire.
The question is not how Dyson built a better vacuum cleaner. The real question is how Dyson convinced the world that the old way no longer made sense. To understand why Dyson's arrival mattered, it is important to understand the industry it entered. For most of the 20th century, vacuum cleaners were not viewed as technology products. They were household appliances. Consumers expected them to perform a simple task: collect dust from floors and carpets. Innovation existed, but it moved slowly. Manufacturers competed through distribution, brand recognition, pricing, and incremental improvements. The basic design remained largely unchanged. Dust entered the machine, collected inside a disposable bag, and clean air exited through a filter. It was a formula that seemed proven, reliable, and profitable.
By the time millions of households had adopted vacuum cleaners as a standard appliance, the industry's leading companies had become experts at refining the existing model, rather than replacing it. Engineers worked on quieter motors, lighter materials, and more convenient accessories. Marketing campaigns focused on power, reliability, and convenience. Yet one issue remained hidden in plain sight. As dust accumulated inside the bag, airflow became restricted. The machine gradually lost efficiency. Suction weakened. Performance declined. Consumers often noticed it, but many assumed it was unavoidable. It was simply how vacuum cleaners worked. For manufacturers, there was little incentive to challenge that assumption. The disposable bag was not only part of the product, it was part of the business model. Customers purchased the vacuum once and continued buying replacement bags for years. The system generated recurring revenue while reinforcing consumer dependence on a specific brand.
From a commercial perspective, the arrangement made sense. The industry's biggest players were competing within a framework that rewarded continuity rather than disruption. Outside the vacuum cleaner market, however, a broader shift was beginning to reshape consumer expectations. Technology was becoming more visible in everyday life. People were starting to pay attention to design, engineering, and performance in products that had once been considered purely functional. Industries such as electronics, automotive manufacturing, and personal computing were proving that consumers would pay more for products that solved problems in noticeably better ways. Innovation was becoming a selling point in itself. This changing environment created an opportunity that most appliance companies failed to recognize. If someone could fundamentally improve the performance of a vacuum cleaner, the product might stop being a commodity and become something more valuable. The challenge was that few people were searching for such a transformation. Most consumers did not spend much time thinking about vacuum cleaners. The category lacked excitement. Retailers devoted limited attention to it. Investors saw little reason to expect revolutionary change from a household cleaning device. The person who saw the opportunity was not approaching the problem as a traditional appliance executive. James Dyson was trained as a designer and engineer, and his perspective was shaped by frustration with inefficiency. While using a conventional vacuum cleaner, he encountered the same problem experienced by millions of consumers. The machine lost suction as the bag filled with dust. Unlike most users, however, he refused to accept the explanation that this was normal. Instead, he began asking a different question. What if the problem was not inevitable? What if the entire design was flawed? That question became the starting point for everything that followed.
The idea itself was deceptively simple. If a vacuum cleaner could separate dust from air without relying on a bag, it might maintain consistent performance. Yet transforming that concept into a practical consumer product would prove far more difficult than identifying the problem. Existing manufacturers had decades of experience, established supply chains, and successful products already generating revenue. Challenging them required more than a better idea. It required rethinking a product category that the rest of the industry believed had already been solved. At the time, few people could have predicted that this pursuit would eventually redefine not only vacuum cleaners, but the relationship between engineering, design, and consumer appliances. What began as dissatisfaction with a common household product was slowly becoming the foundation of something much larger. The industry simply did not know it yet. The breakthrough did not arrive quickly. What appeared to outsiders as a clever idea became years of relentless experimentation. James Dyson pursued a technology known as cyclonic separation, a process capable of removing particles from airflow without relying on a traditional bag. The concept had already been used in industrial applications, but adapting it for a consumer product proved extraordinarily difficult. Prototype followed prototype. Each version revealed new problems. Designs were refined, discarded, and rebuilt. Most inventors would have stopped long before reaching a viable solution. Dyson continued. The challenge was not only technical. Even after developing a working design, convincing established manufacturers to embrace it proved almost impossible. From their perspective, the existing business model already worked. The industry's leading companies saw little reason to replace products that generated steady profits.
A bagless vacuum cleaner threatened not only existing product lines, but also the recurring revenue created by replacement bags. What looked like innovation to Dyson looked like disruption to companies that had spent decades building successful businesses around the old system. Unable to gain support from major manufacturers, Dyson took a far riskier path. Instead of licensing the technology and allowing another company to bring it to market, he eventually pursued the creation of his own brand. This decision transformed the project from an engineering challenge into a business challenge. Building a product was one thing. Building a company capable of competing against established global brands was something entirely different. Yet this is where the story began to change. When consumers finally encountered the product, they immediately noticed something different. The transparent dust container exposed the inner workings of the machine. Instead of hiding dirt inside a disposable bag, the product displayed exactly what it collected. The design turned a technical feature into a visual demonstration of performance. Users could see the results of every cleaning session. More importantly, they experienced the promise at the center of the product: powerful suction that did not fade in the same way traditional bag vacuums often did. The innovation alone attracted attention. The design made it memorable. At a time when most household appliances blended into the background, Dyson products stood out. Bold colors, visible engineering, distinctive shapes, and a focus on functionality gave the machines an identity rarely associated with cleaning equipment. Competitors had spent years treating vacuum cleaners as practical household tools. Dyson treated them as technology products. That distinction became one of the company's greatest advantages.
As sales increased, the company developed a reputation that extended beyond the vacuum cleaner market itself. Customers were not simply buying a cleaning device, they were buying into an idea. Dyson represented engineering as a form of problem solving. Every product was presented as the result of questioning assumptions and redesigning everyday objects from first principles. This philosophy resonated with consumers who increasingly valued innovation and design. The company also benefited from a shift occurring across consumer markets. Premium products were becoming more accepted. Customers were willing to pay higher prices if they believed the performance justified the cost. Dyson positioned itself at the high end of the market, competing less on affordability and more on technology, efficiency, and user experience. This strategy allowed the company to avoid direct price wars while building a powerful brand identity.
As Dyson expanded internationally, the impact became impossible for competitors to ignore. Established manufacturers that had once dominated the category suddenly faced a challenger that was changing customer expectations. Features that once seemed unnecessary became selling points. Engineering became part of marketing. Product design became central to brand strategy. Companies that had spent decades competing within familiar rules found themselves reacting to a new standard they had not created. The growth extended beyond vacuum cleaners. Rather than remaining a single-product company, Dyson used its expertise in motors, airflow, filtration, and engineering design to enter additional categories. Hand dryers, air purifiers, hair care devices, and other consumer products followed. Each launch reinforced the same message. Dyson was no longer a vacuum cleaner manufacturer. It was becoming an engineering company whose expertise could be applied across multiple industries. This expansion strengthened the brand's position. Success in one category created credibility in another. Consumers who trusted Dyson's approach to solving one problem became more willing to trust its solutions elsewhere. The company was building something larger than a product portfolio. It was building an ecosystem of innovation centered around a consistent philosophy. By this stage, Dyson had achieved something few companies ever manage. It had transformed a mature, unglamorous industry into a platform for technological leadership. The company was no longer fighting for recognition. It had become the benchmark others were measured against. Rivals adapted their designs. Competitors introduced their own bagless products. Marketing strategies shifted. The entire industry began moving in a direction Dyson had helped define.
What started as frustration with a household appliance had evolved into a global business empire built on engineering, design, and the belief that accepted solutions should never be accepted without question. For a time, it appeared that Dyson had solved the challenge every ambitious company dreams of solving. It had not merely entered an industry, it had rewritten the rules of the industry itself. For many companies, success creates a dangerous illusion. The larger the empire becomes, the easier it is to believe that the formula responsible for past victories will continue working in the future. Dyson had built its reputation by challenging assumptions, but as the company grew into a global brand, it faced a new challenge. The market was changing again, and this time, Dyson was no longer the outsider disrupting the industry. It had become one of the industry's most influential players. The first warning signs did not come from a collapsing business or declining demand.
They emerged from the very success Dyson had created. The company's innovations had become so influential that competitors began adopting similar ideas. Bagless vacuum cleaners, once viewed as a radical alternative, became increasingly common. Features that had helped Dyson stand apart gradually spread throughout the market. Rival manufacturers invested heavily in engineering, design, and product development. The gap that once separated Dyson from competitors began to narrow. This was not an unusual pattern. In technology and consumer products alike, breakthrough innovations rarely remain unique forever. Once a new standard proves successful, competitors study it, improve upon it, and attempt to offer similar benefits at lower prices. Dyson faced the same pressure that many industry leaders eventually encounter. The challenge was no longer convincing customers that bagless technology mattered. The challenge was proving why Dyson remained worth paying a premium for. At the same time, the broader consumer electronics market was evolving at an accelerating pace. Innovation cycles were becoming shorter. New technologies emerged more frequently. Consumers became accustomed to constant upgrades and rapid improvements. Expectations continued rising. What felt revolutionary in one decade could feel ordinary in the next. Dyson responded in the way it always had, by investing heavily in research and engineering. The company poured resources into developing advanced motors, battery technology, filtration systems, and new product categories. From an internal perspective, this strategy was entirely logical. Innovation had built the company. Innovation had separated it from competitors. Innovation had transformed it into a global brand. Continuing to push technological boundaries appeared to be the safest path forward. Yet this strategy carried its own risks. The more Dyson succeeded, the more ambitious its vision became.
The company was no longer focused solely on vacuum cleaners or household appliances. It increasingly viewed itself as a technology company, capable of solving complex engineering problems across multiple industries. This mindset produced impressive products, but it also encouraged the pursuit of larger and more expensive opportunities. One of the most significant examples came when Dyson began investing heavily in electric vehicle development. From a strategic perspective, the decision was understandable. The company possessed expertise in motors, battery systems, aerodynamics, and industrial design. Electric vehicles appeared to align naturally with Dyson's engineering strengths. The automotive industry was entering a period of transformation, and many companies believed the shift toward electrification would create opportunities for new entrants. For years, Dyson committed substantial resources to the project. Engineers were hired, research facilities expanded,
Development accelerated. The company appeared determined to prove that its engineering philosophy could extend beyond household products and into one of the world's most competitive industries. Then came the turning point. After years of investment, Dyson abandoned the electric vehicle project before bringing a production vehicle to market. The reason was not a lack of engineering capability. According to the company, creating a vehicle was possible. Building one that could succeed commercially at a viable price was far more difficult. The economics simply did not support the vision. From the outside, the cancellation looked like a major setback. Critics questioned the decision. Observers wondered whether the company had overestimated its ability to expand beyond its core strengths. Yet internally, the decision reflected the same logic that had shaped Dyson's rise. The company had always been willing to challenge assumptions, but it also recognized when a project could not meet its standards for long-term success. Still, the episode exposed an important reality. Even highly successful innovators face limits. Engineering excellence alone cannot guarantee victory in every market. Some industries require advantages that technology by itself cannot provide. Meanwhile, competition within Dyson's traditional businesses continued intensifying. Rival manufacturers improved cordless vacuum technology. Lower-cost alternatives gained traction. Features that once justified premium pricing became more widely available. Consumers now had more choices than ever before. Dyson remained influential, but maintaining leadership required increasing effort and investment. Another challenge emerged from the company's own reputation. Dyson had spent years positioning itself as the premium choice. That strategy delivered strong margins and a powerful brand image, but it also narrowed the company's audience. As economic conditions shifted in different markets, some consumers became more sensitive to price. Competitors offering similar functionality at lower costs gained opportunities that had not existed during Dyson's earlier years of dominance. None of these developments represented a catastrophic mistake. There was no single disastrous decision that suddenly destroyed the company. Instead, Dyson encountered a more complex reality. The qualities that helped build an empire, confidence, ambition, relentless investment in innovation, and a willingness to pursue bold opportunities, could also create new vulnerabilities. The company was discovering what every dominant player eventually learns. Winning the first battle is difficult. Remaining ahead after the rest of the industry has adapted is even harder.
For the first time in years, the future no longer seemed defined by Dyson alone. The market it had transformed was evolving again. Competitors were stronger, expectations were higher, new technologies were emerging. The company that had once forced an entire industry to change now faced a familiar question from the opposite side of the battlefield. How do you stay ahead when everyone has learned from you? The years that followed revealed a reality that many dominant companies eventually face. Dyson had not collapsed, it had not disappeared. It had not suffered the kind of dramatic downfall that ended the stories of companies like Kodak, BlackBerry, or Nokia. Yet the company was operating in a different world from the one it had conquered. The era when a single breakthrough could redefine an entire industry had passed. Now the challenge was maintaining leadership in a market shaped by the very innovations Dyson had introduced. The cancellation of the electric vehicle project became one of the clearest symbols of this transition. The decision demonstrated both the strengths and limitations of Dyson's approach. On one hand, the company showed a willingness to abandon a project that did not meet its commercial expectations rather than continue investing indefinitely. On the other hand, it revealed how difficult it is, even for a highly successful innovator, to enter industries dominated by enormous scale, complex supply chains, and established competitors. The future Dyson imagined in transportation never became reality. Meanwhile, the competitive landscape continued evolving. Cordless vacuum cleaners became the standard consumers increasingly expected. Advanced filtration systems became more common. Product design became a major selling point throughout the industry. Features that once differentiated Dyson now appeared across multiple brands. The company still possessed engineering expertise and brand recognition, but the market no longer revolved around a single disruptor. Competitors benefited from the path Dyson had created. Some focused on lower prices, others emphasized convenience, smart features, or alternative technologies. New entrants appeared in categories that had once seemed firmly under Dyson's influence. Consumers gained more options than ever before. In many ways, this was the ultimate consequence of Dyson's success. By proving that innovation could transform a mature product category, the company encouraged an entire industry to innovate faster. What Dyson lost was not its business. It lost something less visible but equally important: the advantage of surprise. During its rise, Dyson had been the company asking questions nobody else was asking. It identified a flaw the industry accepted and built an empire around solving it. Once competitors recognized the opportunity, that advantage became harder to maintain. The company could still innovate, but innovation alone was no longer enough. Every breakthrough had to compete against faster imitators, lower-cost alternatives, and increasingly sophisticated rivals. Yet reducing this story to a discussion of market share or product categories would miss the larger point. Dyson's greatest achievement was never the vacuum cleaner itself. It was changing how consumers thought about everyday technology. Before Dyson, few people expected engineering innovation from household cleaning products. After Dyson, consumers became accustomed to demanding better design, better performance, and better solutions. The company helped transform appliances from background objects into products where technology mattered. That influence remains visible today. Across countless industries, companies now compete using the same principles that helped Dyson rise. They highlight engineering. They showcase design. They explain technology in ways consumers can understand. They attempt to turn ordinary products into premium experiences. In many respects, Dyson helped create the playbook others now follow. The story also offers a broader lesson about power and competition. Markets reward innovation, but they do not reward it forever. Every breakthrough eventually becomes a benchmark. Every advantage attracts challengers. Every empire creates the conditions for the next wave of competition. The qualities that make a company dominant rarely guarantee permanent dominance. Dyson began with a simple observation that others ignored. It grew because it was willing to challenge assumptions that seemed permanent. It succeeded because it treated accepted limitations as engineering problems waiting to be solved. But even companies built on innovation must confront the reality that the future never stands still. This was never just the story of a vacuum cleaner.
It was the story of how one idea disrupted an industry, how ambition transformed a product into an empire, and how success itself can create the next challenge. Because in technology, power is never permanent. Innovation creates leaders, competition tests them, and time eventually forces every company to prove itself again. If you want more stories about the rise and fall of the companies that shaped our world, subscribe to Inside Tech Empires.